In the mid-1930s, Britain lived in an atmosphere of relative calm. Most people mistakenly believed a new war to be impossible, and aviation was seen as a symbol of progress. It was during this time that the aircraft later known as the Bristol Blenheim appeared, though its story began with an ambitious civil project. Frank Barnwell, chief designer at the Bristol Company, in 1933 created the 8-seat passenger aircraft Bristol 135. The machine was powered by 2 Aquila sleeve valve engines and stood out for its unusual speed for the era. Its capabilities attracted the attention of both civil aviators and the military, who saw potential for creating a revolutionary aircraft. The Bristol 135 laid the foundation for the Britain First project, financed by Lord Rothermere, owner of the London newspaper Daily Mail. The ambitious goal was to demonstrate the superiority of a modern aircraft over contemporary Royal Air Force fighters in terms of speed. The Britain First, with Mercury engines, showed impressive results. At full load, it achieved a speed 80 kilometers per hour faster than the newest Gloucester Gladiator fighter, which had just entered production. Such success sparked significant interest. In 1935, the Air Ministry began considering adapting the aircraft for military needs. The focus was on a bomber that would rely on speed as its primary means of defense, rather than on fighter-style maneuverability. The concept of a fast bomber gained popularity far beyond Britain in the 1930s. Theorists believed that an aircraft faster than the enemy's fighters could avoid attacks without heavy armament or armor. This idea became the foundation for the future Blenheim. The design process provoked serious debate over armament. Some experts claimed that additional protection was unnecessary for a fast aircraft, as its main advantage lay in outrunning the enemy. Others insisted on minimal defensive armament to reassure skeptics. The compromise was the installation of only one Vickers 7.69mm machine gun in a turret and another in the left engine nacelle, facing rearwards and controlled by the pilot. Armor plates and self-sealing fuel tanks were excluded entirely. Everything was subordinated to achieving maximum speed. This approach carried obvious risks. The absence of armor and fuel tank protection made the aircraft vulnerable, but at the time, speed was considered the key to survival. The Bristol 135 and the Britain First became prototypes proving the feasibility of transforming a civil machine into a military aircraft. In July 1935, the Air Ministry ordered the first bomber variant, the Type 142 Amurs. The aircraft was intended as an interim model, filling a gap in Royal Air Force armament until new bombers became available. The primary focus was on preserving the speed characteristics that had made the Britain First so attractive. Its commercial potential was evident even before the war. The Blenheim attracted foreign buyers thanks to its speed and modern design. Turkey, Greece, and Romania ordered these aircraft, while Finland, Yugoslavia, and Canada arranged license production. The aircraft became a symbol of technological progress, promising to change the approach to aviation. However, the reality of war would soon test the viability of the fast bomber concept. The development of the Blenheim demonstrates how private initiative can influence military aviation. Without a government order, thanks to Barnwell's ambitions and Rothermere's support, an aircraft emerged that would form the backbone of Britain's bomber squadrons. Transforming the civil Bristol 135 into a military bomber required radical design changes. The new Bristol Blenheim Mk1 had to meet Royal Air Force requirements while retaining its main advantage: speed. Bristol's engineers implemented a comprehensive set of modifications affecting all key elements of the aircraft. The first prototype, based on the purchased civil aircraft, made its maiden flight on 25 June 1936. This moment marked an important stage in the Blenheim's development. The wing underwent a fundamental redesign. To accommodate a bomb bay with a capacity of 450 kilograms, the designers raised the wing, transforming the low wing into a mid-wing layout. This solution freed up fuselage space for bomb loads without disrupting aerodynamics. The landing gear received major reinforcement to handle the increased weight and the stresses of takeoffs and landings. The aircraft's mass reached nearly 5 tons, exceeding the civil version by 900 kilograms. The increase in weight threatened a loss of speed. Engineers installed new Mercury 8 engines, each producing 850 horsepower, along with larger diameter variable pitch propellers. The cockpit was completely adapted for military needs. Instead of a passenger cabin, workstations were arranged for 2 crew members, a pilot and a navigator bombardier. The nose section was extensively glazed, giving the navigator an excellent view for target acquisition and bombing. The question of defensive armament caused heated debate. Some designers argued that the aircraft's high speed would protect it from fighters, making heavy armament unnecessary. The effectiveness of the Vickers 7.69mm machine guns was questionable, as drum-fed ammunition required the gunner to frequently interrupt firing to change magazines. Aerodynamics received top priority. Minimal armor, the absence of self-sealing fuel tanks, and lightweight construction were all aimed at achieving maximum speed. The aircraft could reach up to 450 kilometers per hour, an impressive figure for a mid-1930s bomber. Its range of 800 kilometers allowed missions over significant distances. Flight trials were completed in December 1936 with positive results. The military placed an order for 500 aircraft, later expanded to 1,348 units. Production was established at Bristol, Avro, and Roots factories. Deliveries took place from March 1937 until 1939. The technical decisions defined the Blenheim Mk1 as a light, fast, but vulnerable aircraft due to its lack of serious protection. The design embodied the dominant philosophy of the era. Speed could compensate for the absence of armor and heavy weaponry. The Bristol Blenheim Mk1 entered history as one of the most well-known aircraft of the late 1930s, gaining wide popularity in Britain and abroad. Its high-speed performance and modern design made it attractive to numerous countries seeking to modernize their air forces. Well before the outbreak of the Second World War, the aircraft had become a symbol of technological progress in aviation. Production of the Blenheim Mk1 was on a large scale. After successful trials in 1936, the Royal Air Force ordered 1,348 aircraft, which were built at 3 factories, Bristol, Avro, and Roots. Deliveries began in March 1937 and were completed by 1939, allowing a significant number of squadrons to be equipped. By the start of the war, 16 British bomber squadrons had received these aircraft, most of which were based in Africa and the Middle East. This deployment reflected Britain's strategic priorities as it prepared for possible conflicts in its colonies and peripheral theaters of war. Africa and the Middle East became key areas because the local conditions allowed the aircraft's speed to be used effectively against less modern opponents, particularly Italian biplanes. These regions also required aircraft with long range, which perfectly matched the Blenheim's capabilities. Organizing such large-scale production and deployment required significant resources, and the war would soon reveal how ready the logistics were to sustain these machines in combat conditions. The commercial success of the Blenheim Mk1 reflected the optimism that prevailed in pre-war aviation throughout the decade. Many nations believed that fast bombers would radically change the rules of warfare, enabling them to avoid fighter attacks and complete missions effectively without heavy losses. The Blenheim embodied this revolutionary idea, but the reality of combat was soon to put it to a serious test. In the next part, we will examine how the Blenheim Mk1 performed in the first battles of the Second World War, the challenges it faced, and why its concept proved less effective than expected. By the outbreak of the Second World War, the Bristol Blenheim Mk1 had already become an important part of the Royal Air Force, but real combat conditions quickly revealed both its strengths and weaknesses. Its speed, so impressive in the pre-war years, now faced the challenges of wartime operations across various theaters. Let us look at how the Blenheim Mk1 was used in Africa and Europe, the successes it achieved, and why its concept proved vulnerable. In Africa and the Middle East, where most of the 16 bomber squadrons equipped with Blenheim Mk1s were based, the aircraft faced the Italian Air Force. Italian biplanes such as the Fiat CR-42 were slower than the Blenheim, allowing British crews to successfully complete missions without significant aerial opposition. The aircraft effectively bombed targets and conducted reconnaissance, demonstrating its ability to operate over long distances. The main adversaries in this region proved to be harsh climatic conditions and logistical difficulties. Heat, dust, and a shortage of spare parts led to frequent breakdowns, while navigational errors by crews caused losses. Over the course of the campaign, most aircraft in the region were lost due to these factors rather than to combat. The situation in Europe was drastically different. The Blenheim Mk1 carried out raids against German targets, particularly during the so-called Phony War in 1939. These missions proved extremely dangerous. Aircraft were sent on raids in small formations without fighter escort, making them easy prey for German Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters and anti-aircraft artillery. On 10th of November 1939, during a raid on German ships in Wilhelmshaven Bay, 8 out of 10 Blenheims were shot down. Such catastrophic losses highlighted the vulnerability of the aircraft. Its single Vickers machine gun in the turret had large blind spots, and its weak firepower made repelling attacks difficult. The gunner's need to frequently change drum magazines further reduced defensive capability. Despite these problems, Blenheim crews displayed great courage. During the Wilhelmshaven raid, one damaged aircraft deliberately crashed into the German cruiser Emden, inflicting serious damage. This incident became one of the first examples of a deliberate ramming attack in the Second World War, although the names of the crew are unfortunately unknown. Such acts of self-sacrifice underline the desperation faced by crews due to the aircraft's weak armament and lack of protection. Unprotected fuel tanks easily ignited when hit by tracer rounds, and the absence of armor made the aircraft extremely vulnerable. Crews tried to compensate for these shortcomings on their own. In field conditions, they installed additional machine guns in the engine nacelles and beneath the tailplane, and some even mounted weapons in the nose section. These modifications could significantly improve survivability. The heavy losses in Europe showed that the fast bomber concept, which had seemed so promising in the 1930s, had not withstood the test of modern war. The Blenheim Mk1's speed, while notable for its time, could not protect it from faster and more maneuverable German fighters. The successes in Africa and the disastrous failures in Europe created a starkly contrasting image of the Blenheim Mk1. In regions with weak enemy air forces, it could fulfill its intended role, but in clashes with the Luftwaffe, its limitations became clear. These lessons forced designers and the military to consider modernizing the aircraft. In the next part, we will look at how the new version, the Blenheim Mk4, appeared and how the aircraft was adapted to the role of night fighter during the Battle of Britain. With the outbreak of the Second World War, the Bristol Blenheim Mk1 required serious modernization to meet new challenges. The result was the Blenheim Mk4, which effectively became a new aircraft with substantial structural changes. This modification improved the bomber's capabilities and allowed it to be adapted to the role of a night fighter, something that proved critical during the Battle of Britain. The Blenheim Mk4, known during development as the Bolingbroke, made its first flight on 24 September 1937. The most noticeable change was the extended nose section, which improved working conditions for the Navigator bombardier. The fuselage was lengthened by 1 meter, additional fuel tanks were installed in the wings, and range increased to 2,400 kilometers. This modernization opened the possibility of operating over much greater distances. The power plant was also updated. The Mercury 8 engines were replaced by Mercury 15s, which ran on 100-octane fuel for better performance. However, the increased weight of the aircraft negated the potential gains. Its maximum speed remained at 450 kilometers per hour. Armament of the Blenheim Mk4 evolved gradually. Initially, the aircraft carried a BI Mk3 turret with a single 7.7mm Vickers K machine gun, later replaced with the modified BI Mk3A turret mounting 2 such guns. A single fixed 7.7mm Browning machine gun was mounted in the port wing. For fighter missions, the Blenheim MK4 could be equipped with a ventral pack containing 4 Browning machine guns. This conversion, known as the Blenheim MK4F, was carried out in workshops by modifying bombers. Production of the Mk4 began in March 1939 with over 3,000 aircraft built, all initially intended for bombing missions. However, the most interesting service came in the Blenheim Mk4's role as a night fighter. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, the Royal Air Force faced the problem of defending against Luftwaffe night raids. They needed an aircraft capable of carrying radar and an extra crew member to operate it. The Blenheim Mk4F proved an ideal candidate thanks to its payload capacity and 3-man crew. The aircraft was fitted with the AI Mk3 radar, the first production radar for night fighters. The antenna system included a transmitter in the nose, receiving antennas on the engine nacelles to determine azimuth, and additional antennas above and below the port wing for measuring vertical angle. The first successful night engagement took place on the night of 2 to 3 June 1940, when a Blenheim Mk4F equipped with radar shot down a German Dornier Do-17 bomber. This victory demonstrated the potential of radar in night defense. By mid-1940, 31 Blenheim Mk4Fs were in service with AI Mk3 radar, and 6 night fighter squadrons formed the backbone of Britain's air defense during the German Blitz. Interception results remained modest due to the unreliability of early radar. Technical problems with the equipment made target detection difficult, meaning success depended more on crew skill than on technology. By the end of 1940, the Blenheim Mk4F began to be replaced by the more modern Beaufighter, equipped with the improved AI Mk4 radar. This marked the end of its role as a night fighter, but its contribution to Britain's defense remained significant. The aircraft was also used for night raids against German airfields, beginning on 21 December 1940 when No. 23 Squadron carried out the first such mission. With the arrival of more capable aircraft, the Blenheim Mk4 was relegated to secondary duties, including crew training. By the middle of the war, the Bristol Blenheim had already shown its strengths and limitations, but Britain's Air Ministry had not given up on the aircraft's potential. In 1940, the final modification appeared, the Blenheim Mk5, which was intended as a response to the new demands of war. This version was conceived as a ground attack aircraft for close support of troops on the battlefield, as well as for use in anti-shipping operations. In this part, we will examine the features of the Blenheim Mk5, its combat service, and its ultimate role in the Second World War. The Blenheim Mk5, introduced in mid-1940, underwent significant changes compared to earlier versions. Bristol's designers reworked the aircraft's nose section, adding 230 kilograms of armor to protect the crew. Armament was strengthened with 4 7.7mm Browning machine guns, and it could carry up to 4 bombs. The changes were intended to make the aircraft an effective attack platform capable of striking ground targets such as vehicle columns or enemy fortifications. A total of 9x42 aircraft of this modification were built, the last leaving the factory in June 1943. Production was focused on adapting the aircraft to new roles, as earlier versions had revealed the Blenheim's obsolescence as a bomber. The Blenheim Mk5's first combat use as a ground attack aircraft took place in the African theater, where desert conditions and low enemy air activity seemed ideal for its debut. The reality proved different. On 17th November 1942, 12 aircraft from No. 18 Squadron attacked enemy positions along the front line. As they withdrew, they were intercepted by 3 pairs of German Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters. In the brief battle, all the British aircraft were shot down. This incident was telling. Despite the added armor and heavier armament, the Blenheim Mk5 remained vulnerable to modern fighters. Heavy losses forced a reconsideration of its use as an attack aircraft. After the setbacks in Africa, the Blenheim Mk5 was reassigned to anti-shipping operations. In maritime missions, far from enemy fighters, the aircraft achieved better results. They attacked German and Italian shipping in the Mediterranean, disrupting Axis supply lines to Africa. The aircraft's long range and ability to carry bombs made it effective against transport vessels. In these operations, the Blenheim Mk5 was able to play to its strengths, avoiding direct encounters with faster and more maneuverable fighters. Coastal Command also used the aircraft to escort convoys and engage German reconnaissance float planes, adding to its value in secondary roles. By the end of the war, the Blenheim was used mainly in training and anti-shipping units. Its role as a primary bomber or fighter had ended with the arrival of more modern aircraft such as the Beaufighter and Mosquito. Nevertheless, the Blenheim left a distinct mark on aviation history. The concept of the fast bomber, though ultimately outdated, was typical of the 1930s. Similar ideas were pursued in other countries. The Soviet Tupolev SB was also based on the assumption that speed could substitute for protection. However, the rapid pace of aviation development, especially the emergence of faster monoplane fighters, made such aircraft vulnerable early in the war. The Blenheim's legacy lies in its versatility and contribution in the early stages of the conflict. It served in theaters from Africa to Europe, undertaking missions from bombing to night interception. Its use as a ground attack aircraft, though unsuccessful, demonstrated the willingness of designers to adapt the airframe to new demands. At the same time, the Blenheim story illustrates how quickly aviation evolved in its first decades. Created at a time when the entire history of aircraft construction spanned only 3 decades, the Blenheim embodied ambitious ideas that over the course of the 20th century were tested and often broken by the realities of war. Its contribution to the Second World War was significant, but its design limitations underscored the necessity for constant technological advancement in aviation.